I never thought I'd witness true evil until the night Prince Zamoni came to our village. I can still hear the screams, feel the cold air as he passed by, and smell the faint trace of blood on his spear. It all started when the moon was full, casting an eerie light over the village. I was sitting with my grandmother outside our hut, listening to her stories. She always told me tales about the spirits of the forest and the ancestors who protected us. That night, her voice shook as she spoke of the wicked prince who ruled from the mountains. "Never look him in the eyes," she whispered. "His soul is black, and his wrath spares no one." I brushed it off as just another story meant to scare children. But that was before I saw him. Prince Zamoni arrived unannounced, riding a dark horse that seemed to appear out of the shadows. He wore a long black robe, and his eyes gleamed like fire. There was something wrong with his face. It was too still, too cold, as if he wasn't entirely human. The villagers quickly gathered in the square, summoned by the sound of his soldiers beating their spears against their shields. I hid behind a tree, too scared to join the crowd. My grandmother grabbed my arm, trying to pull me back, but I couldn't look away. Something about him froze me in place. "We're here for the tribute," he said, his voice low and sharp. "You know the rules." The elders stepped forward, trembling. "We have nothing left to give, my prince," said one of them, a frail old man named Kweku. "The harvest failed this season. We are barely surviving." Zamoni tilted his head, his lips curling into a twisted smile. "Then perhaps you'll offer something else." His words were slow, deliberate, like a predator circling its prey. He looked at the children gathered near the elders and pointed at one, a boy no older than 5. The crowd gasped. Mothers held their children tightly, some falling to their knees in tears. "No," cried the boy's mother, clutching him to her chest. But the soldiers moved swiftly, tearing the child from her arms. That's when I knew this wasn't just a story. This was real. I wanted to run, to scream, but my legs felt like stone. My grandmother whispered prayers under her breath, her hands shaking as she clutched her beads. "Do not draw his attention," she warned. But I couldn't stop staring. Zamoni's gaze swept over the crowd, and for a terrifying moment, his eyes locked onto mine. I'll never forget that look, cold, piercing, and full of something I can only describe as hunger. He raised a finger, and one of his soldiers began walking toward me. My heart pounded so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. Before the soldier reached me, a loud wail erupted from the forest. It was a sound I'd never heard before, like a mix of human cries and the howl of an animal. The crowd fell silent, and even Zamoni seemed startled. The soldier stopped in his tracks. Then came the whispers. "The forest spirits," someone murmured. "They are angry." Zamoni's face twisted into a sneer. "There are no spirits," he spat. "Only cowards hiding in the dark." He motioned for his men to proceed, but the wail came again, louder this time. The villagers backed away, fear etched on their faces. And then it happened. From the edge of the forest, a shadow emerged. It moved like smoke, shifting and twisting, impossible to pin down. Zamoni's soldiers hesitated, their spears trembling in their hands. The shadow moved closer, and as it did, the air grew colder. The village elder, Kweku, stepped forward, raising his hands. "Spirit of the ancestors, forgive us. Protect us from this evil." His voice cracked with desperation. The shadow stopped just short of Zamoni. For a moment, the prince stood frozen, his arrogance replaced by something I never thought I'd see: fear. The shadow reached out, its form becoming clearer in the moonlight. It wasn't a spirit at all. It was a man, cloaked in dark robes, his face hidden beneath a hood. He spoke, his voice deep and resonant. "Zamoni, you have taken too much. Your greed has angered the land. Leave now, or face the wrath of those who protect it. Zamani laughed, but it was hollow, forced. "You're just a man," he said, drawing his spear. "No spirit can stop me." The man didn't move. Instead, he pointed to the ground beneath Zamani's feet. The earth began to tremble, and cracks spread like veins. Zamani's horse reared, throwing him to the ground. The villagers gasped as the prince scrambled to his feet, his composure shattered. "This is your last warning," the man said. Zamani hesitated, his eyes darting between the man and the growing cracks in the earth. Then, with a snarl, he mounted his horse and barked orders to his men. "We are leaving," he growled. "But this isn't over." As quickly as they had come, Zamani and his soldiers disappeared into the night. The villagers stood in stunned silence, their fear slowly giving way to relief. The hooded man turned to us and lowered his hood, revealing a face weathered by age but strong and kind. He was not a spirit but a protector, a guardian of the land. "You are safe now," he said, his voice softer. "But remember, the land watches. Keep your hearts pure, and you will always have its protection." I never saw him again, but his words stayed with me. Zamani never returned to our village, though whispers of his cruelty persisted in other places. I often wonder what would have happened if the guardian hadn't appeared that night. Even now, years later, I can still feel the chill of that night, see the coldness in Zamani's eyes, and hear the wail that saved us all. Some say it was just a coincidence, a trick played by a brave man. But deep down, I believe it was something more, the spirits of the land watching over us, ensuring that evil never triumphs over good. And I never forgot my grandmother's words, "Never look him in the eyes." She was right. I wish I hadn't.